Geography students, I'm going to go through a few slides here together with you. These slides today, for those of you who will be in class with me, we'll go through these together. And for everybody else, I hope that you take these slides as notes on your own. But then take a listen to what I want to talk about with the Balkan Wars. So I'm going to jump ahead here a few slides. And if you remember when we talked about the Balkan Peninsula, and this is a big area of conflict, partly because of what I will talk to you about in the first few slides of this section. Um, Eastern Europe was kind of this crossroads where there's many different languages, many different ethnicities, and many different religions. And so it has created a lot of tension and turmoil and unfortunately wars in that area for actually generations and generations and generations, hundreds and hundreds of years. So let's just talk about some of the more recent, actually, Balkan Wars. We are not going to get into the older conflicts. But as I said, it's a conflict over religion, language, ethnicity, and then always land. And if you even look at this map here, you can really truly see how many different kind of nations, ethnicities, languages, and then we'll throw in their religions are as well. And so I just kind of want to go through a few of these. In Serbia, now I say they're often because it doesn't mean that everybody is, but more generally, in Serbia, people are more often Orthodox Christian. And if you understand what Orthodox Christian is, it's essentially like Catholicism without a pope. So they're very much Catholic, except they don't follow the Pope as the head of the church. And they do some things that are different. If you are Orthodox Christian and you come to a Roman Catholic church, you're allowed to receive communion. And so sometimes we call it Eastern Catholic or Orthodox Catholic even. And so much of Serbia is often Orthodox Christian. Bosnia is often Muslim, the religion of Islam. Croatia is often Catholic, and this would be Roman Catholic. Albania, often Muslim. Slovenia is often Protestant or Catholic. And then there are some pockets of Jewish populations, some areas of Jewish people throughout the Balkan region. Not a lot of Jewish people, especially after World War II and the Holocaust, but we do see pockets. Typically, if you can see in Vojvodina, here I'll move my camera here, it would be there, and that's probably even a better way to look there. Do you see these little pockets of white where it says other, the 3.9%? That is typically, not always, but those are typically Jewish populations. And now keep in mind, all of these, they have different customs, they have different traditions, they have different languages. And so we have a quite actually small area that tends to be sectioned off by mountains, the Balkan Mountains, and from the rest of Europe. And this is a really important area, especially because of conflict. So the Balkan Wars were in the 1990s. And as I said, we're not going to go through all the other wars and conflicts that had happened, but the Balkan Wars are an important one that happened in the 1990s. After World War II, Yugoslavia became a nation. It was made up of six different republics. And there was a guy who kind of emerged, and this is what I will talk about in one of the earlier slides. There was a guy who emerged who became a really strong dictator, and his name was Tito. After Tito died, there was kind of like this power vacuum, and they didn't have anybody to really like take power. Eventually, one guy in the 80s and then especially in the 90s rose to power in Serbia, and his name was Slobodan Milosevic. There he is right there. Now I'm going to move my camera to the other way. So Slobodan Milosevic wanted to expand Serbia. He became the president of the Serbian Republic, and he really wanted to expand Serbian land because, as you saw, there's all these kind of groups vying for land because there's not a whole lot of area. Well, anytime somebody thinks that they deserve more or are entitled to more, this is when you get conflict. So after around 1990, so again, in the slides beforehand, we talked about the end of Russia, communist Russia, and the fall of the Berlin Wall. So after about 1989, in the early 1990s, Slovenia and Croatia declared their independence from Serbia. They basically said, we don't want to be a satellite nation. We don't want to be under anybody else's power and control. We want independence. They were actually able to get it. Croatia, it took a little bit more time and work, but both were able to declare their independence from Serbia. Bosnia and Herzegovina also decided, you know what, this was like a couple of years later, we want our independence too. We want to be free of this larger Yugoslav nation, this South Slav nation. But Serbia said, no, that's not going to happen. Like Milosevic is mad enough that this is going on. He doesn't want to lose any more land than he already kind of is trying to gain control of. And so Serbia actually launches a war to stop him and begins this practice of ethnic cleansing. If you know anything about Hitler, this is exactly what Hitler was doing. He was basically saying there's a section of society, there's an ethnicity that we want to like take away and take out, and they do that by like literally systematic killing of people. 200,000 people died. Millions of people fled their homes. Millions upon millions of people fled their homes. In fact, we have refugees from Bosnia and Herzegovina here in North Dakota. I know of a couple of people who go to Cheyenne, whose families have come here because of the wars that had been going on in the Balkans in the 1990s. All of this is going on, and Kosovo decides they also want their independence. And so now we can see this map now. Serbia is actually getting smaller and smaller, and this is not what Milosevic wants. They demand that Kosovo, you are not leaving, because Kosovo is probably the most like Serbia. They had the most Serbs in Kosovo, and they demanded to keep control over the Muslim population. Again, remember, some of these areas are primarily, not all, but it's not just the religion, it's also kind of the ethnicity and the traditions behind it. So a war in Kosovo began when the army began attacking Serbian officials. They were called the KLA, the Kosovo Liberation Army. That's the reason why I lived in Italy for 3 years, because of a war that was happening in Kosovo. You see the Adriatic right there on that map. I just lived like just across the Adriatic, not very far away, so NATO forces would often go to help and assist in the war in Kosovo against Slobodan Milosevic. Eventually, they found out what Milosevic was doing. Ethnic cleansing was found out. Milosevic was arrested, he was tried, and he was sent to jail for crimes against humanity. He actually died in jail. It's probably been about 20 years now. He spent some time in jail, and then he died there. During all of this, Montenegro said they wanted their independence from Kosovo, and they became an independent country in 2006. And so they were really the last to kind of declare their independence. But as you're going through all these areas to know the nations and the capitals, you know, there's like a lot of countries jammed in this little area. And it's good to know why they have been broken up like this, and why are they independent nations now the way they are. You'll learn about these things also in world history, but not quite so much of the geography of it, more of the history behind it. So I want to kind of give you a little understanding of that history. So that is it for the day. I will talk to you another time. See you then.